Okay, so this is my second film about this sitting meditation, which is the full awareness of breathing. And this second part is basically introducing three new gathas, or kind of in-out breathing things to add on to the end of our normal sitting meditation. So yeah, let's go through that. So far in our sitting meditation, we've focused our mindfulness or our awareness on ourselves, on our body, on our feelings, and then on our mind finally. But this is all a bit egocentric because it's always thinking about us. But until we've kind of got an awareness of ourselves and we've settled ourselves down properly, it's difficult to bring other objects from outside of ourselves into our meditation. So we need to kind of deal with self first. So there's loads of other stuff that we could think about, from our pets to planets and silly hats, cars, cameras, and the world, and lots of other things. Friendships and people in our lives. There's three new gathas, as I say, and they are called the three doors of liberation. And they're emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness. And they're three concepts that sort of follow on one from the other, and they kind of leave you in a position where the object of your meditations kind of come into your meditation and connected with you, and then you kind of realize that connection. Emptiness. What is it? Well, I always, lots of people begin by saying what it isn't. So emptiness is not what you think. It's not what it sort of normally means, I suppose, in that it's not nothing. It's not the absence of anything. It's not nihilism. So it's not like saying nothing exists and we're all empty, of any meaning or stuff. What it means all things, and from now on I'm going to call things dharmas, just because that's the word I use to describe things. So they could be physical things like a cat or a camera or a car, but they could be non-physical things, other phenomena, like they could be our emotions, they could be songs, or anything at all. They don't necessarily need to be alive, so they could be rocks or other non-living things. So emptiness says that all things do not have an independent self, and that they arise dependent on other conditions. So in themselves, they do not exist in and of themselves, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. So obviously a cat is a cat, but a cat arises dependent on other conditions. So things are neither existing nor non-existing, they're empty, so they're somewhere in the middle. So an example is a plant. So we take a seed and we plant it in the soil, and say it's a seed of a cosmos plant, like the one I brought to the meditation session recently. And we plant that seed in the soil, and I do that. I plant it in the soil and I water it and I keep it warm, but it's also watered because it's outside. It's watered by the rain, and the sun falls on the soil and that warms it up. So it's not me particularly, but the environment, I suppose, nurturing it, and it begins to grow. First it's a shoot, like the first picture, and then it gets bigger. It gets leaves, a bit more rain, a bit more sunshine, more leaves, and then it makes a bud at the tip of the plant. And then the bud opens into a flower. So that's a nice rose, not a cosmos, but you get the idea. So we can see that the flower is made up of lots of different conditions, and that's another word that I kind of use a lot. So conditions precede the Dharma or the thing. So those conditions were me planting the seed itself, the soil, the sun, the rain, the atmosphere, oxygen, carbon dioxide. Oh, here we go, I've said it here. The seed, the soil, the leaves, the rain, the sun, the carbon dioxide, and me because I planted it. So each condition has its own set of conditions. So the seed, for example, is the seed from another plant, from another flower that preceded it. And that came from another one, and that came from another one, that came from another one. The soil is kind of made up of rotten plants. Maybe the cosmos that made the seed has rotted and made the soil. So every condition also has its own preconditions, and so on infinitely. So nothing exists absolutely. Everything depends upon a precondition to arise. So here's a gata. I am aware of the flower, but this could obviously be substituted for anything. So I am aware of whatever it is. And then on the in-breath, and then on the out-breath, the flower is empty. So we're just aware that the flower is dependent on preconditions, like a recipe. And we could bring our awareness to what those preconditions might be, but really we're trying to get the idea that the flower is not a flower but in itself, but is made up of lots of different components or conditions. Okay, so that is emptiness. So the next scatter is signlessness, or the next door of liberation is signlessness. And this is a nice quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, which is, where there is perception, there is deception. So when we perceive something, it's actually not there. Okay, so all dharmas, all things are dependent on preconditions. So the sign is us saying that is a flower. So the word flower, the sort of concept flower, is a sign. But actually, that thing that we call a flower is a myriad of other conditions all coming together to manifest as a flower in this particular moment. And some of those conditions that give rise to the flower will also give rise to me. So not all of them, obviously, otherwise I'd be a flower. But here's I think I have an example later. Okay, so that's me in silhouette, and there's the flower. And this is the example. So here I am sitting looking at my flower, and I'm breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. I'm breathing in oxygen, and I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. And we know that one of the conditions to make the flower was carbon dioxide, which it used in photosynthesis to build sugars. So some of what is making this flower a flower was actually me, because I breathed out that carbon dioxide. And the flower took it in, and it has turned it into sugars, which it will then use to either sort of build more flowers or more parts of its body, if plants have bodies, and so on. So I am literally in the flower, in the form of carbon dioxide that came from my lungs. But it doesn't stop there. Oh no. Some of the oxygen I'm breathing in was also made by the flower. So the flower is literally in me too. So we interact, we inter-are. Thich Nhat Hanh describes it as interbeing. So to be or not to be, we interbe. So we are being but connected because of these shared conditions. And there are other shared conditions. So this is another example. So I planted the seed that gave rise to the flower. So I was that condition that planted the seed. I was involved in that condition, maybe. And as we look deeply at any Dharma, we can see that the boundary between me and my Dharma is not entirely clear, not as clear as we may think. There's no absolute boundary between me and the flower. It's kind of like a blurred boundary. I mean, obviously I am me and it is a flower, but the conditions that led to me and led to the flower could be shared. So we inter-are. So this is my gatha that I use. So on the in-breath, I am aware of myself and the flower, or I'm aware of me and the flower. And then on the out-breath, there is no boundary, or there is no border, or whatever word you like to use to define boundaries. You can use that word. And then aimlessness is the last one. So another quote from Thich Nhat Hanh is the idea of aimlessness is not to put something in front of yourself and then run after it. You need to bring your awareness to the fact that you have all the conditions that you need in the present moment. So it's really that simple. Having established that the flower is a manifestation of many conditions and that I share those conditions directly and indirectly with the flower, I bring my awareness to the fact that me and the flower have arrived in this particular moment at exactly the same time. So we're not going anywhere, and that's what it kind of means. That's where I suppose the aimlessness comes. We haven't got anywhere to go to. We are there. We have arrived. We are home. Sometimes you can think of it like the feeling that you get when you're driving along with someone and they're in the passenger seat, or you're a passenger and the driver's driving along, and you get there wherever it is you're going, and you've arrived, you're there, you know, that kind of feeling. Oh yeah, me and this person I'm sharing this moment with, we're here, we're arrived. And there's a sense of being in the having arrived in this present moment, and you're not particularly thinking about what happens when you get out the car and go anywhere, or the fact that, you know, there was a lot of traffic on the way here. You're thinking, oh, we are here right now. So that's what it is. So the gatha brings our awareness to time itself, and that our experience can only be of this present moment. So our memory of the past is pretty patchy, pretty inaccurate, and our predictions of the future are complete speculation, really, and they're normally completely wrong. So there's not a huge amount of point spending a lot of our energy thinking about the future when most of our predictions won't come true or are wrong, or at least during the meditation. So the object of the meditation and ourselves have arrived in this moment with absolute clarity, and that's really the key, is to kind of wake up and realize that you and the thing are there, and that you are connected to that thing in a myriad of different ways, indirectly and directly. So the gatha could be, I'm aware of myself and the flower. We have arrived in this moment. And there's a little epilogue that you can do at the end of aimlessness, if you've got a bit more time and the wake up bell hasn't sounded, but you've done the gatha 2 or 3, 4, 5 times, however many times you want to do it, and you want to move on. You could just breathe, return to your breath, the very first, one of the very first gathas, which is I am breathing in, I am breathing out. But you could think we are breathing in, we are breathing out, because you and that thing are there in that present moment together. And with that sort of not thinking about anything, not that just awareness of your breath, your connection to the thing, you can start to look at the thing, the Dharma, in a way that you may not have looked at it before, and you might get some sort of insight. You might think, oh, actually, yeah, I've just realized something about that thing that I've never realized before. Because you've got a kind of clear view of the thing. I'm not saying it always will happen, but I'm just proposing that it might. And from time to time, when it does, it will surprise you, and you'll think, oh, I've never thought about flowers in that way, or whatever it is that you're thinking about, or meditating with, rather than thinking, because we're trying not to think. We're trying not to think that much. At the very least, it's quite fun, and so it's an enjoyable 20 minutes. Okay, so what are dharmas? Well, they can be anything. They can be any object. Have a think about people in your life. And they don't have to be people that are still in your life. So they could be ancestors or relatives or people, friends that you've lost contact with or that have passed away. You can think about objects like a car, or there was a picture of the planet earlier. I'm not sure. I mean, that's pretty big. You could think about the Earth, but you could think about rocks or waterfalls or whatever. You can think about feelings, your feelings, and then things like art, songs. The list goes on and on and on and on. They're all flashing. Okay, so that is the 3 doors of liberation, and hopefully you can tack it on to the end of the normal sitting meditation and bring your awareness to things outside of your body, and hopefully try to get some insight into those things in a way that you may not have before. The other thing that you could think about is that you don't have to always have this awareness while you're in a sitting meditation. What I'm trying to, one of the concepts I'm trying to get across is that you can have awareness while you're not meditating. So these 3 gathas can be practiced during walking meditation or just in everyday life. And if you think about it, you could be potentially aware of every phenomenon around you all at the same time. And that sort of complete awareness, that complete awakenness, to me, is what being awake is all about. And maybe not a target that we're trying to achieve and, give ourselves a hard time if we don't get there, but it certainly is a concept to aspire to try to be awake as much as possible, fully aware, beginning with our breath, but then moving through our bodies and then out into the outside world, and not always in sitting meditation or even walking meditation, but at any moment in our lives. Okay, that's it.